We're back live here at the Engine Performance Expo, and how cool is that? To watch a couple of guys in the dyno room just making rip after rip, run after run. You don't go to work, my friend. You get to have,
I don't.
You get to have a lot of fun.
I'm outed, so all my family that's watching this, now they know
it's not a job.
It's not a job. I go play, and the cool thing is I get to play with my buddy. I mean, Dyno Don up there. Yeah, as you can tell from watching the video, me and him get along really well. We've done a lot of work together, had tons of fun, and hopefully I think there's lots of good questions coming out of all that. I think we started up a little bit.
Well, it is. I want to remind everybody, we're coming down the home stretch here. We're going to do a little Q&A, so get your questions into the comments section. But also, we're going to have a round table after this where we kind of get everybody together and just have a final thought conversation. And then at the conclusion of today, not long from now, we'll be announcing the big winner. That's right.
In my pocket now.
He knows. You know already.
I know.
I don't know.
Lips are sealed.
Exactly. Don, what's it like working with Lake before we get into the Q&A?
Well, you know, it's really been a pleasure over the last 12 years or so. You know, you guys just hit on it. It's not like work. When Lake comes into town and we get to do some testing, we actually have fun doing it. We've got our routines, we've got our set, our set things that we do to make sure that the testing goes the correct way. But the nice part about it is that Lake and I have such a good relationship that we have fun doing it. We're laughing, we're joking the whole time. At the same time that we're learning so much, and again, over the last 12 years, it's amazing how much I've personally learned about oils, about rings, just from working with Lake. It's really been a pleasure.
Excellent.
And they've told me everything about motors. I tell everybody, my second group is the Shaver family. That Shaver Racing Engines is where I was able to take theoretical knowledge and get my hands dirty and bust some knuckles and do all that. And Don and Ron and Dennis and Keith and Craig, everybody, Dan, everybody out there has been a huge mentor to me, so I can't thank them enough for everything.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we got some questions. We're on the home stretch. You ready to dive in?
Tee it up. Let's go.
All right. So, and coming out of a little over an hour of you guys in the dyno room, so people are fired up. For instance, Randy Larson wants to know, are you going to mount a temperature sensor on the oil filter for your next dyno runs from now on?
So, hey, Randy, good to see you, buddy. So, no, we're just not going to put 16th, 3/16 rings in our engine anymore because it makes too daggone much temperature. That's the real simple answer.
There you go. There you go. Bill says, with extra oil, did you see oil?
Well, the interesting thing.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Don.
I was just going to say, as far as the temperature sender thing, where our temperature sender is on the engine is actually right next to the oil filter. So we're actually, when this whole thing happened with the crinkling of the label on the oil filter, we were actually able to see it on the computer screen, the added temperature.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah.
They had a premonition. All right, next one. With extra oil, did you guys see oil pressure drop at high RPM?
Yes. I'm not sure. Maybe not have seen it on the video, but that was the biggest thing we saw. And Don and I have seen this over before. And of course, he's busted me, numerous times for overfilling it in the old days when we were first doing it. That you could see, wait, as you're making that sweep, all of a sudden oil pressure drops off at the top, and he would say, hey, Lake, you overfilled the oil. Go back in there, because when you're running around changing, and there were some days we would do 4 different cam swaps in one day. So we're busting our tails, run, and it's so easy when you're going fast. Just dump a cord in, dump a cord in, dump a cord in, dump a cord in, pull the dipstick. Yep, that's good. Shove it back in. By the time that oil makes its way to the bottom, oil level goes too high, and the telltale on the dyno was watching that oil pressure. He'd go, yep, go drain some out. Go back in there and drain it out because he didn't want to affect the test. So, yes, we saw that.
And why is that?
Oh, so as that oil level goes up higher, the crank can hit it easier. So we're talking about in this video is a stroker engine. I know there's lots of questions about how do you determine the proper oil level and all of that. And obviously, the easiest thing to do is to measure from the bottom of the oil pan up to the where the crank is, right? And then you need to know that, okay, from the bottom of that throw to the up, that's your maximum fill level. And then you would need to take the pan out and then fill it to that level to know that that's the practical way of doing it. Now, what we've done is we kind of know that, okay, for a 7-quart oil pan with a 383 stroker with a little bit more stroke to it, then we just kind of use that oil pressure gauge as our telltale. And we just pull a half a quart out at a time until the oil pressure gauge calms down and goes from there. We've never gone through taking it off and measuring it and all that, because I just relied on Don and their wisdom to say, hey, do it the easy way, just watch the gauge. The gauge will tell you everything. Right, Don?
Yes, and the reason, I think we went over this in the recorded video. The reason why the oil pressure will go down is because as that crankshaft hits the oil, that is going down and actually hitting the oil, it's actually starting to try to foam the oil. And when that happens, the oil becomes so aerated, there's so much air in that oil that the air makes its way down to the pickup where it's actually going into the motor. And so you're not, at that particular point, the reason why the oil pressure is going down is because you're not just pumping oil, you're starting to pump a little air also, and that's really not a good thing.
And air is compressible, which is why the oil pressure drops.
Bad thing. Overfilling oil, putting more oil isn't better. It is worse.
That's correct.
It is worse. Okay, Scott wants to know, this one initially at Lake, but obviously both of you guys, don't the thicker rings by themselves, regardless of friction, offer a larger heat transfer area out to the engine, a multiplier effect that cased to engine to gain more heat, overheat, is what it...
Okay, so I see Scott's point. Obviously, I talked to a couple of different piston manufacturers about this. And the reality is, okay, yes, the ring is a conductor of heat, just like Pat Musey was saying.
Yes.
You got all this heat from the combustion event, and it does transfer out through the rings to the cylinder wall to the water. But the thing is, it's not the only way heat gets out of the piston. And in this case, okay, maybe a good example is I'm going to use some gauge on wire. That if you've got a 16 gauge wire and you're only moving X amount of energy through it, it's only going to get so hot. But if you have a much smaller wire with the same energy, it's going to get a lot hotter. Okay, that's an energy transfer thing. So there is a threshold there that, again, too much, too little. I think we said it how many times this week? The word balance. So yes, a 16th, 16th, 3/16 ring gives you more conductivity, but what we saw in this test is that the increase in friction due to that rubbing. I talked about before in the video, maybe I didn't do it in that video, actually, another video. We did a couple of videos that week about this. That if I take my fingers and rub them like this, I don't generate a whole lot of heat or a whole lot of friction. But if I rub my hands like this, I instantly generate more heat, more friction. The reason the water temperature and the oil temperature went up is due to friction, because the constant in all of this between the previous ring set and the 16th ring set is we had the same fuel, same compression ratio, same timing, same speed, same load. The only variable was the thickness of the ring. So it's pretty conclusive that the extra friction generated by the tension and the size of the ring is what generated the excess heat. Don, you can elaborate if you want to. I know I'm kind of opinionated on that.
Well, that was a very good explanation. And what I wanted to add is that the theoretically the piston itself is not supposed to be the piston skirts are not supposed to be touching the cylinder wall. As we all know, that happens all the time. But a lot of the heat that is generated by the combustion temperature, by the combustion explosion, is taken out of the piston by the actual oil, by the oil that's hitting the backside of that piston. On a stock engine, because you've got so much oil slinging around everywhere, the oil is always going to hit the backside of that piston, and that's where a lot of the heat from the piston is dissipated, along with the skirts itself. Now, for example, on some of our sprint car engines, especially the new Ford engine that we're working on, we are, and of course the cup guys and a lot of guys have been doing this for years and years and years. We actually have we are actually squirting, purposefully squirting oil on the back side of the piston to take the heat out of the head, the top of the piston. And by doing so, especially on some of our sprint car engines where we're generating so much heat, we can actually lean the engine down a little bit more. We can actually add a little bit more timing because we're trying to take the heat out of the piston with the oil. Thus, we are able to stretch the edge a little bit farther because we are cooling the piston down. Now, if we didn't do that, what happens is the piston will actually get too hot. If it's too lean, if there's too much timing, the piston will actually get too hot, and it literally, because of the combustion temperature itself, you can melt a piston, and I've done it before, you can melt a piston out of a motor in about 4 seconds.
Right. It's a great example, Don. We talked about it earlier in the week when the milling guys were here. But it's good to remember that oil isn't just a lubricant. It cleans, it cools, it transfers power. It does more than one job. And in this case, like Don's talking about, it's really important when you have that high compression engine, like we were talking about the director injection engines, DI engines, especially turbocharged DI engines, that extra heat that's generated, you cool it down, not by the water system, oil. That oil squirter on the piston, on the underside of the piston, big deal.
All right, we're going to keep on going with the questions, try to get a couple more here as we are at the end. For those of you who want to know who won the short block, it's going to be the very last thing we do. We're going to draw the name after the roundtable. Stick around. Will not be long. Stick with us. And, of course, thank you so much for your interest. And to everybody involved, getting a lot of kudos from people out there on the web. Loving this. And, yes, we're going to repost everything. It is all going to be available for you as long as the electricity stays on in our world.
Yeah, exactly. The future consumption is pretty much guaranteed.
Okay, Scott wants to know, the oil filter was empty when it was cut open. He assumes, it was tipped over and drained. Doesn't that risk dumping out all the telltale debris? What is your feeling about filter magnet type devices?
Don, take that one.
You know, that is an excellent question. One of the filter that we use, this is the Wix filter, the Napa filter, brand filter we use. First of all, the filter that's on the engine is basically on the engine with the opening of the filter facing up and the bottom of the filter facing down. Now, that's not the case with all motors. For example, on our sprint car motors, the oil filter's in sideways. But on this particular motor, the oil filter's on like this. So when we cut that oil filter open, I'm going to take the guts out of it. I got a little pail right next, a little bucket I always use for this, and I'm going to stick the filter element in there to let it drain so I can see what's in the filter element. And then I will take the can, and because the contaminants are always going to be heavier than the oil, the big cans anyway, I'm going to slowly pour that oil out into the can to the point where, not all of it, but to the point where I can actually see the bottom of the can. And if there is debris in that filter, that's when I will be able to see it. So, again, very good question. Now, when you talk about filter magnets, gosh, that is an incredibly good idea. And not just for the filter, but, you know, for most wet sump applications, for example, you know, they make drain plugs with a magnet in them. That is an excellent idea. Now, what a lot of folks don't know is that the filter that we use, and I don't know whether Wix does this on purpose or not, but if you actually there's a spring on the bottom of the filter element itself that helps keep that filter element in place. That spring that's between the bottom of the can and the filter element is actually magnetic. On the I don't know if it's that way on all filters, but I know on every Wix filter that I've cut off, it's magnetic. If you take a field strength indicator, which I think I video of that to Lake at one point, it is actually a magnet, and sometimes you will actually see on that spring itself.
All right, next up, for Lake on oil testing, can you name that company of the oil test company that your Porsche buddy discussed, the one that picked up on what he was saying about silicone?
Yeah, so SPEEDiagnostix, well, stay tuned. After this segment, we actually have a little tech tip from SPEEDiagnostix. But back to Scott's question about pouring out the telltale information. Well, if you pour that into your oil sample bottle, it can show you all the stuff that you can't see with your eye. But the SPEEDiagnostix tech tip will touch on that. Next question.
All right, all right. Next up, how come on, well, this is an interesting question. How come on my dyno I do correction for the amount of humidity, yet cars with EFI don't have a sensor to measure humidity?
Well, I believe on EFI systems, and Ben Strader is a way better guy to answer this question than me, they're looking at mass airflow. So they're able to somewhat correct for that. So I think that's the same kind of thing, is that I know the drag racer guys, I think about the Pattersons and the Stennetts. You know, Gary Stennett's a great guy that has detailed notes about all the air temperature variables. Right. I mean, Don, you have the weather station in the dyno cell as well. So talk about that.
Correct. Well, you know, the Black Widow Superflow dyno that I use, it's just an incredible dyno. It does so much, and it actually comes with its own weather station. So the weather station is always plugged in right very, very close to the motor, very close to the air that's coming into the engine, so that I can get some accurate readings. And the weather conditions are extremely critical, especially on some of our sprint car stuff, because on the sprint car engine, a sprint car fuel system is stupid. It doesn't correct for temperature or pressure conditions. It doesn't correct for any of that. So you have to know exactly what the weather is to be able to fuel the engine. Now, when I first started at the shop, the computer technology wasn't as good as it is now. I guess that's dating me a little bit, but we actually used to have charts. We had charts that were mounted on the wall next to the dyno, so that we would manually take the temperature, pressure, and humidity factors externally, and then take the number that we came from the dyno, and then we would correct based on the charts that we had next to the dyno. Man, it was a tough process. I mean, it took forever, and it wasn't very accurate. But luckily, all the new systems, all the new dyno systems come with a weather station built in, and it just really makes life so much easier.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
All right, couple more minutes. Going to try to rapid fire a little bit, because everybody knows we're going to be giving away the motor, so they're logging back on again. Adam wants to know, and I'm sure you guys discussed it, but maybe hit on it again. What is the best way to break in an engine if you do not have access to a dyno?
Okay, so we actually did a video on that with Ben Strader and Keith Jones that we will actually have kind of a bonus feature that we will release at a later date that answers that question specifically, because we can't answer that in the time we got left.
Wow. But wait, there's more.
Exactly.
What about this one? What's better, upsweep or downsweep, and why when dyno testing?
Don, that's your area of excellence.
Well, we all do an acceleration sweep starting from low RPM to high RPM. We can do it either way, but the difference is that when you're starting at the low RPM and then allowing the dyno itself to release the loader so that the engine will increase in RPM, versus you get a certain number. Now, if you're doing the opposite sweep where you're starting at a high RPM and dragging the engine down, you got to remember that is going to change the force on that load cell. It's going to be greater when you go from high to low, when you're actually trying to stop the motor on the dyno. So, and of course, again, most of the good dynos will compensate for that. But we have always done the acceleration test from a lower RPM to a higher RPM, and the computer itself does all the corrections for us.
Other thing too is, in most cars, what you're trying to do is accelerate the car, which is why there are some dynos that allow the engine to freely accelerate, so you can actually measure the acceleration time. At the end of the day, that's what moves the car.
And there you have it. Great job, guys. That's going to do it for this Q&A. Don, thank you very much. It was great. Learned so much about dyno testing. There is a right way to do it, and we just learned a whole lot. And I got to say, everybody out there who submitted a question, thank you very much. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but a lot of them were very similar. But the thing that probably stood out the most was everybody just super excited about the information they received over the course of the last 3 days. So Don, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. To all you guys out there, thank you very much. And on behalf of the audience, thanks to Lake and the team here at the end.
Thanks for having me.
Expo. Awesome stuff. Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Don.
And now we're coming down the home stretch. We're going to have a roundtable discussion in a few minutes. But first, people were just wondering about where they can send their oil to be diagnosed to find out a little bit more information.
Yes, sir.
We know exactly where.
Hi, I'm Lake Speed Jr., Total Seal Piston Rings, but I'm here today to talk to you about something that's not a piston ring. We're going to talk about oil analysis, specifically a SPEEDiagnostik's oil analysis kit. You know, as an oil guy in my previous life before coming to Total Seal, I can tell you that contamination is the #1 issue with your motor oil. Your oil is going to do the job it's designed to do unless it gets contaminated. And contamination can come from a couple of things. It can come from fuel, it can come from coolant leaks, but also the wear metal. Your engine is telling you if it's happy or unhappy. You just have to listen to it. The best way to listen to it is via used oil analysis. Just like going to the doctor and having your blood taken, they can analyze your blood to know what's going on inside your body. Used oil analysis, the same thing. It can analyze the health of your engine by taking a sample. And it is super easy. And that's the great thing about the SPEEDiagnostik's kit, is that these kits literally come with everything you need, complete prepaid to take the sample, send it back to the lab, and get a report back that's actually written in English and color-coded, so you don't need to be a tribologist to read it and understand it. So the basic kit actually has, the starter kit I should say, actually comes with a sample pump, so you don't even have to change your oil to take a sample. You can take the sample straight from your engine without having to do an oil change, but also, it also comes with a prepaid mailer. So all you have to do is take your sample, either via drain or take it for the sample pump, take this kit, the sample, put it inside the mailer, drop it in the U.S. mail, already prepaid, pre-addressed, drop it in the mail, off it goes. You'll fill out the information online. There's an online sample submission form. Every SPEEDiagnostik's kit has a unique ID number. That way the sample lab and you know exactly which sample you sent, because if you've got more than one car, or maybe you want to sample your engine, transmission, gears, whatever that's got oil in it can be analyzed. You can take that sample, send it in, follow the easy instructions for the online submission form, and then you get back that report. Again, the report is color-coded. If it's green, it means you're good to go. If it's yellow, it means you're still within the normal range, but you're getting near the edge. It's kind of like the rumble strips on the highway. You're not off the road yet, but you're getting pretty close. Then, if it's red, then you know, woo, we've got a problem. We need to investigate, dig deeper to find out what's going on. Because again, going back to what I said at the very beginning, contamination is the #1 reason for engines to fail. More often than not, it's not a parts defect issue, it's contamination. I can tell you from my experience, from working at Joe Gibbs Racing, working at Driven, now working at Total Seal, the #1 reason for an engine to be worn out typically is overfueling. So by using the SPEEDiagnostik's kit with the gas chromatography, we can determine the exact amount of fuel in your engine. Based on that, we can know whether or not the wear that's occurring in your engine is from overfueling, which means you can extend the life of your engine, which saves you big money just by doing used oil analysis. So let me tell you a little story about a real world experience. At Joe Gibbs Racing, because they've gone to the NASCAR Truck Series spec motor, that engine cannot be rebuilt between races. It can't even be inspected internally between races. They went to the SPEEDiagnostik's oil analysis kit and were actually able to save engines that would have failed in the next race just by determining it via the used oil analysis. One race, not only is it what could save you a win, but it can also save you a championship, which it did for them. So a little bit of money up front to do the analysis can save you big money long term. So that's the reason to do used oil analysis, and SPEEDiagnostikix makes it easy. Thanks for watching.
What a day, what a day, what a day. Yeah, my brain is swollen. I've learned so much today. They told us, don't start cars. We are not going to listen.